Turkish Airlines presents Business Africa.
Welcome to Business Africa. I'm your host, Afolake Oyinloye. Here are the top stories making headlines this week. Cocoa farming is under pressure in West Africa. Is financing the missing link? We explore expert insight into the challenges and the potential solutions for a struggling sector. East Africa leads with nearly 6% growth as the continent eyes a 4% economic rise in 2025. We have a closer look at the region's momentum. Central African Republic's coffee sector is under threat amid neglect and cross-border smuggling, but local growers still hold on to hope despite insecurity and weak state support. Cocoa drives the economies of many West African nations, supplying nearly 70% of global demand. Yet local farmers still struggle with financing, fair pay, and ethical labor practices. We explore how new agribusiness models aim to transform the cocoa value chain and improve lives on the ground.
West Africa accounts for around 70% of the world's cocoa supply, a market valued at over $60 billion globally. Many of Africa's dedicated farmers, however, face immense challenges, key among them being the lack of access to the fundamental tools for growth, vital financing for seedlings, fertilizers, and even the labor to cultivate their land effectively. In some West African cocoa-producing nations, fewer than 40% of farmers have access to formal credit, a critical barrier to increasing production. Farmers and companies dealing with them also have to be mindful of sustainability issues like deforestation and child labor. Stakeholders in this lucrative industry therefore have to solve the puzzle of how Africa's cocoa can thrive ethically and sustainably while meeting both local needs and stringent international demands. As the world demands more ethical chocolate, the burden to meet these standards often falls unfairly on the shoulders of the poorest actors in the value chain. Many farmers lack the training or resources to adapt to new expectations. Yet, without compliance, their produce risks being excluded from lucrative European and American markets, further compounding their vulnerability. New African agri-businesses like Sunbeth Global Concepts are rewriting the narrative. They're not just exporting commodities, they're investing directly in the source. Through ethical sourcing, they ensure farms are free from deforestation and that children are in schools, not fields. Beyond business, Sunbeth has drilled dozens of boreholes, renovated clinics and schools, and even paid for school leaving certificate exams for farmers' children. Tangible impacts felt directly in the communities.
Join us now is Olasukomi Owuyemi from SGC Sunbed Global Concept. Welcome to the show. What are the biggest economic challenges cocoa producers face in Nigeria today?
The biggest issue beyond Nigeria and everywhere is financing. It's very important that not just the traders have access to financing. Once anybody owns a land, they should have access to the financing to buy the seedlings to plant. That's what increases production. But people don't have access to farm. That's the biggest part of the issue. So people need to have access to financing beyond the traders and the buying houses. The farmers must, for everyone that owns a farmland, they must have access to financing to get seedlings, to employ laborers, to get fertilizers, to grow.
On sustainability, how is SGC tackling child labor and empowering women in the sector?
We continue to map out the farms where we source from, where our local buying agents source from. We provide them support and we give them the basic constitution of our sourcing, which involves them knowing that they cannot have child that should be in school on the farmland. So for us, we practice ethical sourcing, and this is not just by words of the mouth. It's done by the constitution we have for our sourcing, the steps for our sourcing, the guidelines for our sourcing. So this encompasses all our sourcing operations, and this helps us to ensure that we source from even farmlands that are free from deforestation and farmlands that are also free from children that should be in school.
How is your organization ensuring that cocoa farming benefits local communities?
In Nigeria, we've done over 50, 60 boreholes across the country. Aside from that, we have renovated universities, we've renovated clinics, we've renovated schools. We have paid for we've paid for school living certificate exams of farmers' kids. And we have continued to give pre-financing to the communities where we buy from, pre-financing to regional merchants who then give to the farmers where we buy from. So these are the impact. And beyond this, we have also worked with suppliers of ours that for some reasons they died in the course of them doing business. We've ensured continuity for their business by bringing up their wife or their kids to take over their business and continue to support them with capital. This has continuously put their business alive and these families then do business. They are able to raise money and profit to continue to take care of the families.
Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you. Thank you.
East Africa remains the continent's economic frontrunner with a projected growth of nearly 6% in 2025, outpacing both African and global averages. So what's fueling this resilience? We dive into the data and regional drivers behind the boom.
Despite a turbulent global economy, East Africa is standing out as a beacon of resilience. According to Deloitte's latest Africa Economic Outlook, the region is expected to post the continent's highest growth, rebounding from 1.5% in 2023 to 4.9% in 2024, and potentially reaching 5.7% this year. That's nearly double the projected average for the rest of Africa and significantly higher than the International Monetary Fund global growth forecast of just 3.3% for the same period. So, what is fueling East Africa's rise? Analysts attribute this growth to a combination of factors, including sustained infrastructure investment, improved regional integration, and a growing digital economy. Countries like Kenya and Ethiopia have seen increased activity in sectors such as fintech, transport, and clean energy. Meanwhile, the rest of Africa continues to face challenges, including inflation, currency volatility, and political uncertainty. Southern Africa is expected to grow at a slower pace, hovering around 2.2% by 2025 due to a weak South African economy. North and West Africa show moderate potential, but ongoing debt pressures and fragile governance in some nations temper their outlook. Still, Deloitte emphasizes that Africa's overall recovery remains intact, driven by its youthful population, with over 60% being under the age of 25, expanding urban centers, and diversification efforts in manufacturing and services.
Coffee farming in the Central African Republic was once a key driver of the economy, but the sector is now weakened by insecurity, underinvestment, and armed group control. Yet some farmers continue to cultivate, holding on to hope for a revival.
Every day, Jerome travels over 40 kilometers from Bangui to tend to his coffee plantation. At his age, clearing weeds alone is a tough job, but with no government support, he presses on. There is no help. Look at my age. And it is not the only coffee plantation that I have, but I still do all the clearing myself to the end in order to harvest the coffee. In Bangui, coffee has become scarce. Prices have more than doubled, and finding quality beans is harder. unless you venture into insecure rural areas. Coffee was once the backbone of the Central African economy, accounting for more than half of the country's exports. But years of armed conflict, degraded roads, and low investment have brought the sector to the brink of collapse.
Les quelques rares caféculteurs qui détiennent encore.
As a result, the few coffee farmers who still have stock can't find buyers.
Ces acheteurs-là, venez les chercher. Et tous ces éléments.
All of these factors combined mean Central African coffee is suffering immensely. And it's fair to say it's on the brink of extinction. At the Ministry of Agriculture, officials confirmed that coffee is now among the priorities in the President's National Development Plan for 2024-2028.
That's it on this edition of Business Africa. Thank you for watching. For more updates and in-depth stories, visit us online at africanews.com. See you soon.
Business Africa was presented by Turkish Airlines.